For as long as I can remember, I was the family joke, the one who never quite fit in. They laughed when I ate by myself, like it was some kind of spectacle. Whenever I said I needed space, they rolled their eyes, like I was being dramatic. And the moment I started saying no, suddenly I was selfish, inconsiderate. Every dinner felt like a circus, everyone talking at once, pretending to care, until someone made me the punchline. So I stopped showing up, stopped calling. When I finally found some peace in that silence, they didn't see relief, they saw arrogance. But honestly, I wasn't trying to punish anyone. I needed that quiet just to survive. Then, out of nowhere, they showed up with their hands out, asking for help. I remember that dinner like it was yesterday, even though I'd rather forget it. The whole table was packed. Me, my parents, my two older brothers, and my aunt who'd come over unannounced. The room felt smaller than usual, like the walls were closing in, and the noise was louder, but I kept my mouth shut. Tried to disappear into the chair like I wasn't even there. I don't say much in those family meals. I just don't. I figured if I stayed quiet, maybe nobody would notice me, or better yet, maybe they'd leave me alone. But of course, they never do. Not really. Halfway through dinner, my oldest brother smirked and said loud enough for everyone, "Hey, don't zone out on us now, Mr. Antisocial." The table laughed, but not in a nice way. More like they were waiting to see how I'd fall apart. I forced a smile, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I'm just tired," I managed to say. That just made my aunt chime in. Too sensitive. That one, always off in their own world. She nudged my mom, who just gave me a look that felt sharp, like I was a problem she wanted to sweep under the rug. The laughter kept going, stabbing, but nobody was really laughing at a joke. It was something else. Something mean. I remember staring at my plate, suddenly obsessed with the crumbs and the way the sauce pooled at the edge. I didn't want to look up, didn't want to meet anyone's eyes, because the second I did, I felt exposed like a joke everyone knew but me. I clenched my fists under the table, nails digging into my palms, because that was easier than saying anything back. My brother rolled his eyes and said, "Come on, lighten up. You act like the world's ending if you don't talk." His voice was louder now, almost daring me to prove him wrong. I opened my mouth, then shut it again. What could I say that wouldn't make things worse? If I fought back, I knew it'd turn into an argument, and God knows how that ended before. Instead, I smiled through every joke, because in our house, silence was safer than honesty. My parents just watched, like they were spectators at a game, and I was the player getting crushed. My dad sipped his wine, pretending he wasn't paying attention, while my mom smoothed her napkin, her face carefully blank. Not a single word of support, just that thick layer of let it go hanging between us. That night, the room felt suffocating, like the air was too thick to breathe. The chatter and fake laughter bounced off the walls, but I was trapped in my own head, ruminating over every look and every word. I wanted to disappear, to vanish into thin air and leave all of them behind. I caught my own reflection in the window, wide-eyed, maybe a little too still. For a moment, I thought I could just get up and walk out. But I didn't. I stayed, grinding my teeth so no one would hear I was breaking inside. The thing that gets me is how small I felt. Not just embarrassed. I was angry too, burning inside that they thought it was okay to treat me like that, and that I just had to take it. But even that anger was tangled with this quiet, gnawing loneliness. Like this wasn't just about one dinner or one insult. It was everything that piled up over years, and I was somehow the only one who cared it hurt. And no one else seemed to see it. Or maybe they did, and just didn't care. I don't know which is worse. After the jokes died down, and they started talking about normal stuff again, I kept staring at my plate, pretending to listen but really somewhere else. My heart felt like a knot, twisting tighter with every laugh that wasn't mine. The whole time, I kept thinking maybe if I just said something, anything, they'd stop. But I knew they never would. Not really. I thought that was the worst part, but it wasn't. What got me the most was the silence that followed, how it stretched between us like we were strangers sitting in the same room. I thought I was invisible. Turns out, I was something else entirely. That night, after I left that dinner, I didn't feel like showing up anywhere ever again. I mean, I'm not saying I was mad or ready to make a scene. It was quieter than that. I just knew I had to stop going. Not because I wanted to punish anyone or prove a point, but because something inside me felt like snapping if I stayed. So the next weekend, While everyone was texting about plans and passing around photos from the last family gathering, I stayed home. I made myself a simple dinner, just some pasta, nothing fancy, and ate it alone at the kitchen table. It felt strange at first, not having the usual noise, the constant chatter I'd gotten used to tolerating. But then it felt safe, like I didn't have to hold myself together for anyone else's comfort. I spent those evenings reading, just losing myself in books, letting the words take me somewhere different. The quiet was heavy but still, somehow, comforting. I found myself breathing easier, even if a dull ache threaded through my chest. There was a sadness there, a kind of mourning for what I'd lost, for the connection I thought I had. But underneath, there was this small relief, too. It felt like finally being allowed to just be me, without pretending or shrinking. Sometimes, late at night, I'd catch myself grabbing my phone, wanting to text one of them, just to check in, or maybe to say something innocent, but I stopped myself. I realized I needed space, real space, to figure out what I could handle. Not out of pride, no, but because I had to protect what little I had left. There was one particular evening I remember clearly. I'd cooked dinner, sat down with my book, and after a while closed it to listen. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge and the ticking clock on the wall. No voices pulling me apart, no awkward forced conversations, just me. For the first time, the only voice at the table was mine, and it didn't sound wrong. I felt this strange freedom in that silence. The kind you don't notice until all the noise stops, and suddenly you realize you're standing alone, steady. That night I let myself cry a little, quietly, because the relief wasn't painless. It was a reminder that I'd been holding so much hurt inside, hoping it would fade. And maybe I'd been too stubborn to admit that walking away was what I really needed. By the end of that week, I'd stopped answering calls. They tried a couple of times, but I just let it go to voicemail. The messages piled up, mostly normal chatter, sometimes asking if I was okay. I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep or explain feelings I wasn't ready to face. I just needed the quiet. I'm not pretending it was easy. Some nights, I sat in the dark feeling like I'd shut a door nobody else saw. I missed the way things were supposed to be, or maybe the way I'd imagined they could be. There was a part of me hoping they'd notice, that someone would reach out and break the silence for real. But I kept it shut because if I opened that door, I wasn't sure I'd want to close it again. Looking back, I think that time was the first step I took to protect myself, not by fighting, but by stepping aside. I learned the hard way that sometimes enough is just enough. And even though the sadness hung around like a shadow, behind it was a quiet sense of freedom. I didn't belong at those tables anymore, not in the way I wanted. So I stayed home, kept my little routines, and slowly let the silence settle in. It wasn't peaceful yet, but it was mine. And that was enough to hold on to for now. The first message came late at night, when I was already half asleep. It was from Mom. Just a couple of sentences, but every word felt loaded. I don't understand why you have to be so difficult. We're only trying to help. I stared at my phone for a long time, fingers frozen over the keyboard, before deciding not to reply. Then the texts kept coming, scattered throughout the week. Some sweet, some sharper, always wrapped in that same guilt. We miss you. You're pushing us all away. Maybe if you gave us a chance, things wouldn't be so bad. The worst part wasn't the words themselves, but the way she mixed helplessness with accusation, like she was both grieving and blaming at the same time. Meanwhile, my siblings took it to social media. Posts with vague captions. Some people act like they own the world until they realize no one's paying attention, or, funny how the loudest complaints come from the quietest rooms. I knew exactly who they were about. I checked the comments, laughing emojis, snarky replies, people tagging each other like it was some joke. They weren't even subtle anymore. I felt my chest tighten every time my phone buzzed. This constant stream of passive aggression from everyone who was supposed to be close to me made me want to crawl under the bed and stay there forever. I kept thinking, maybe I did have an attitude problem. Maybe I was the one making it worse. But then I remembered the nights I'd spent scrolling through their group chats, seeing the way they mocked me behind my back, how they twisted my words, laughed about things I never said, or made me out to be some angry, selfish monster. And I thought, they started it. They built those walls and locked me out first, then acted surprised when I stopped trying. There was a message from my sister that really stuck. She said, "It's exhausting trying to deal with someone who only cares about themselves." I wanted to shout back that it felt exhausting being the only one trying to protect myself. But I didn't. I just read and felt something hard and cold settle in my stomach. I flipped open my laptop, trying to catch any hints of apology or warmth in the endless threads they'd started, but all I found was more whispers and sideways digs. Even old photos of us together had comments that made me feel like I never belonged in that family picture. Somewhere deep down, a part of me still hoped they'd come around, that someone would admit we'd all messed up and try to fix it. But each new message chipped away at that hope until it felt like dust slipping through my fingers. I started going to bed earlier, pretending I didn't see the pings or the scrolling feeds when I woke up. It was easier to pretend I was numb. My friends noticed I was getting quieter. One of them asked if I wanted to hang out, but I declined, telling them I needed space. Which felt ironic, because I was already trapped in this space, just on the other side of a glowing screen where family used words like knives and smiles were always fake. Some nights, I found myself rereading the messages, trying to find a crack in all that coldness, something real, something human. But there wasn't anything. Just more walls, more distance. The worst was feeling like I was fighting a war no one else even saw, while they whispered about my attitude, like it was some character flaw I could just fix. It was like they wanted me gone, but without saying it out loud. Like they were convincing themselves they didn't care, even as they kept sending those poison texts. I hated that part the most, the way love came wrapped in guilt, and silence sounded like punishment. One night, I caught myself typing a reply to Mom, something honest, something that might break through the static between us. Then I stopped. What would change? Would she understand, or just see it as more proof I was the problem? So, I didn't send it. Instead, I put down my phone, feeling this heavy mix of frustration and pity for all of us stuck on different sides of this digital Cold War. And as the screen went dark, I realized I was more alone than I'd admitted, maybe even to myself. I thought maybe this was just a phase, something temporary. But the silence after my decision to not respond felt heavier than any message. Like whatever was breaking between us wasn't going to heal anytime soon. I finally got that promotion. It wasn't a big headline, just a step up at my job, more hours, a little extra cash every week. But for me, it felt huge. I sat at my kitchen table, the paycheck landing in my bank account, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel totally crushed. I told myself I'd earned this. I was holding my own, maybe even moving forward. It was quiet. No fireworks, no pats on the back, just the kind of steady that felt like winning. But then, out of nowhere, my dad called. His voice was tight, something breaking under the surface. I could hear the fear even before he said it. The business, it's done. We can't pay the bills anymore. Like a snapped thread, everything his entire life had been seemed to unravel with those words. I stayed quiet on the phone, pretending to listen, but inside my chest was tightening. I wanted to say something that could fix it, but I had nothing. That was when it hit me, the balance shifting. For so long, I felt stuck, like Dad's problems were mine to choke on. Now, with my promotion, I was treading water in a different pool, one where I counted. I didn't share any of this with him because it felt wrong, like rubbing salt in a wound. I'm proud of myself, but it's the kind of pride that tastes sour. Like walking away at the finish line, leaving him behind to drown. A few days later, I went to his empty office space. It was quiet except for the hum of the old air conditioner struggling to keep up. Papers were stacked haphazardly on the desk, unopened bills spilling out of drawers. I stood there longer than I should have, watching the silence swallow it whole. I wanted to be angry, to blame him for letting it fall apart, but all I felt was this tight knot of guilt. Because part of me knew I didn't want to dive back into that chaos. Not yet. When I got home, I told my partner about the promotion with a rush of relief, but the words about Dad froze in my throat. I could see it in my partner's eyes, the worry, the unspoken questions. Like they knew I was shifting into a new place where I had power, but I wasn't fully ready to use it. "You okay with all this?" they asked softly. I shrugged, trying not to let the weight show. Because if I admitted how scared I was to get involved again, how much I wanted to just keep things tidy and distant, that'd mean I was giving up on him. That night, as I lay awake, I kept hearing my dad's voice, strained and small. There was this terrible quiet that pressed on my ribs, like the whole damn house was waiting for me to choose. I hated the thought of turning my back, but I hated even more the idea of dragging myself back into that old life where I was drowning too. I wanted to do the right thing, but I didn't know what that looked like anymore. Maybe I was finally free, Or maybe I was just on the edge of something I couldn't escape. This quiet triumph suddenly felt like a trap. I wanted to hold on to the stability I'd clawed for, but the moment I took it for granted, reality would slam back harder than before. I'm caught between two worlds now, one where I can keep my head above the water, and another where everything crumbles. And the worst part? I'm terrified that choosing the first means losing him forever, but choosing the second means losing myself. I thought, maybe this was the end of the hard part. But lying there in the dark, I knew the storm wasn't over. Not by a long shot. My phone buzzed on the table, and I almost didn't want to check it. But when I saw Mom's name, I answered without thinking. Her voice was shaking before she even said hello. Hey, I hate to ask, but I'm really struggling right now, she said, her words barely steady. The rent's overdue. I don't know how I'm going to make it this month. Or the electric bill. And honestly, I don't even have enough for food. There was a pause on my end. I didn't know what to say right away. Hearing her like that, so vulnerable, something in me just tightened up. I wanted to tell her yes, I'll help. But another part of me stayed quiet, weighing everything we'd been through. I'm sorry, honey, she added quickly, almost defensive. I wasn't going to call, but I don't have anyone else. Her voice cracked. I know you have your own life, but I needed to ask. Please. I swallowed hard. It wasn't the first time she'd asked for money. Or the last. The thing was, every time she'd done that before, there was this undercurrent that made me hesitate. Something that wasn't quite pain, not exactly anger, maybe shame. Like remembering how small they made me feel growing up whenever money came up, like it was my fault we didn't have enough. Part of me was exhausted from it all. But I heard the raw fear in her voice, the kind that stays after someone hits rock bottom. I even caught the faintest crack of genuine need, not just a guilt trip. For a moment, I almost wanted to fall for it, to just give her the money and put an end to this 1000th call. But I didn't. Mom, I said carefully. I'm tight too right now. Things haven't been easy. She let out a shaky breath. I know you have your own stuff, but I'm really scared. I don't want to lose the place. Her fear twisted in the pit of my gut. I hated it. Not because I didn't care, but because I felt trapped between wanting to help and not wanting to get dragged into the same chaos again. The last time I sent money, I got a 3-hour lecture about how I owed her, how I shouldn't be so distant. Couldn't she see I was trying? Look, I'm not dismissing you, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But I can't just throw money at this and pretend it fixes things. Then what do you want from me? She almost shouted, and I flinched. The desperation was sharp, like a blade. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension spike in my chest. I don't know. I don't want to feel like I'm being pulled in, like I'm responsible for all this. I'm my own person now. She was silent for a minute, then quieter. I never meant to make you feel small. I'm sorry if I did. Her apology caught me off guard so much I almost wanted to forgive her right then and there. But maybe because I'd wanted that my whole life, and it still hadn't seemed to be enough, I held back. I know, I said softly. We stayed quiet for a while, me grasping at ways to explain this mess of guilt and distance and love that tangled me up so tight. The pain was real on both ends, I could tell. But so was the history that kept us spinning in this cycle. I don't know if I can help this time, I finally said, voice cracking a little. Not because I wanted to push her away, but because the weight of saying no was dragging me under. I can't promise anything. There was another long silence. Then she whispered, I don't want to lose you too. And that hit me harder than I expected, because I wasn't sure if she already had. I thought the conversation was ending, but the ache in her voice made me realize this wasn't the last line we'd cross, or the last time I'd feel this tug of wanting to fix something that maybe wasn't fixable. I put the phone down without replying, my hands shaking a little. Maybe I should have seen it coming, but part of me wanted to believe this time could be different. I thought it was over, but the silence that followed said otherwise. I showed up that Saturday afternoon, telling myself it'd just be one short visit. I needed to see it for myself, whether anything had really changed. I rang the doorbell, heart pounding, and the door swung open before I could even knock. Same faces I'd seen so many times before, same grins that didn't quite reach their eyes. They still laughed the same way. Only this time, I didn't flinch. Inside, the living room felt smaller somehow, maybe just because I was watching it all differently now. The walls hadn't moved, but I had. I sat on the sagging couch, the one that was always a little too close to the TV, and I watched them. Mom cracking sarcastic jokes about Dad's latest mess-up, Dad smirking through it all like he was untouchable, and the rest just chipping in with their usual remarks. No apologies, no soft edges. The same old game, and I was sitting right back in the audience, the one time I thought I could be part of the cast. I caught myself bracing for some kind of explanation, or maybe an inkling of regret, but no. They shrugged off whatever it was I needed them to admit. When I mentioned how rough the last months had been, Mom just waved it away with a laugh that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Oh, come on. Life's tough everywhere," she said, like that cleared it all. Dad cracked another joke about how I was being too sensitive. "Typical," he said, and the room echoed with laughter. I bit my tongue. The words stuck in my throat because I wanted to scream at them for pretending it didn't matter. Time slowed down, and with each snarky comment, each dismissive glance, I felt this heavy, sinking disappointment build inside. I'd hoped for something real, a crack in the armor. But all I got were the same old lines, the same deflection. It wasn't just that they refused to take responsibility. It was how comfortably they avoided it, like we were all actors in this farce no one wanted to end. At one point, my sister nudged me, smiling this crooked grin like she was sharing some private joke. I realized, with a weird mix of sadness and clarity, that she was caught up in it too. We were all stuck in the same loop, pretending everything was fine because it was easier that way, because facing the truth was too damn hard. I kept watching, feeling a quiet anger settle under the disappointment. Maybe that was the part one didn't expect. How tired I was of this cycle, already knowing the script without needing to hear it again. I thought if I stayed long enough, said the right things, maybe the mask would slip just a little bit. But every second passed, and nothing did. It was like the air around us walled off any chance for honesty. Before I left, I stood in the kitchen while they all gathered around the table, voices overlapping, trading sarcasm like currency. I felt this pinpoint of loneliness sharpen inside me, sharper than any argument or shouted fight we'd ever had. Because deep down, I realized it wasn't just them who refused to change. It was the whole thing, the whole dynamic I thought I could fix by staying or forgiving. I couldn't fix this. Not them. Not us. I didn't say much on the way out, just nodded awkwardly when they told me to come back soon, and I could see their smiles falter for a split second before they recovered. But that moment was enough, a tiny crack that didn't need words, because I already knew what it meant. I turned away, the door closing behind me with a soft click that echoed louder than I expected. Walking back to my car, the afternoon sun was warm, but it didn't touch the cold realization in my chest. Maybe they never wanted to change. Or maybe I just wanted something that could never be real. Either way, I felt this quiet clarity settle over me, the kind that comes when you finally stop hoping and start accepting. I thought I'd find some peace in seeing them again. Instead, I found the exact reason I had to stay away. The old patterns hadn't just stayed the same. They were impossible to break. I sat in my car for a long minute before starting the engine, staring at the house shrinking behind me. And in that silence, I realized something that hit harder than anything they'd said. Leaving wasn't just about distance. It was about saving what little was left of myself. I just wanted to get out. Everyone was loud and asking questions, and I couldn't even look at them without feeling like I was under a microscope. So I grabbed my jacket, mumbled something about being tired, and walked out before anyone could stop me. I didn't say goodbye. I just slipped out the door and kept my head down. My phone was already buzzing when I got outside, but I ignored it. I needed space, needed to air out the suffocating weight of their eyes on me. By the time I was halfway down the block, my phone was blowing up. Messages after messages from family groups, individual texts, all urgent and sharp. The first few caught me off guard. I stared at the screen, fingers frozen. "You've changed. You're cold now, like you don't care. You forgot where you came from." The words stung, but what hit me harder was the tone, like I'd betrayed them. Like I'd become this stranger overnight just by wanting some space. I thought about blocking them, about turning my phone off and pretending none of this was happening. But I didn't. I made myself watch the messages pile up. Every message felt like a push and a tug, guilt wrapped in faint reminders of love. Like they were softening the edges just enough, so I dropped my guard. I could hear it all unspoken between the lines. "Come back and be what we want you to be." It wasn't new. This pattern had played out so many times before. Every guilt trip started with love and ended with a demand. "Why do you have to be so distant? You're making everyone worry. We've always been there for you." Some texts were longer, more desperate. Remember your sister? She's hurting because you won't even call. By now, my chest was tight, the frustration boiling up hot and sharp. I knew what they wanted: control, to drag me back into their world on their terms. But this time, something in me didn't want to cave. I didn't answer any of them. I didn't apologize or explain. I just stared at my phone, thumb hovering over the screen, wrestling with the urge to appease them and the need to protect myself. There was a raw kind of strength I hadn't felt before, like breaking away from the noise wasn't weakness, even if it hurt. I had every reason to feel guilty, but I didn't have to carry it alone. I decided right then, no text from them was going to make me forget who I was anymore. Still, the messages kept coming, faster now, more frantic. When was the last time you even thought about home? You're turning your back on all of us. I swallowed the knot in my throat, feeling the tension spike, but also a strange relief. The chaos outside my door was loud, but inside me, something quieter was settling, a clear line I wasn't willing to cross again. Finally, I locked my phone and pushed myself to walk faster, away from the voices, away from the shame that wasn't mine to own. I thought it was over, but the silence that followed said otherwise. It was late afternoon when I heard the knock. 3 sharp taps on my door, slow enough to be deliberate, like someone had rehearsed exactly how they wanted this to go. I opened it before waiting for a second, and standing there was my brother, his wife, and the 2 kids. They looked tired, not just physically, but like they'd been running on empty for a long time. My sister-in-law's eyes were red, probably from crying. The kids clung to her side like they knew something bad was coming, but none of them said a word at first. I swallowed hard, trying to figure out what to say. I hadn't talked to them in weeks, not because I wanted to keep away, but because things had been like this for a while. The money was tighter than ever. I'd heard things through the grapevine, stuff I wasn't sure I wanted to believe. Now, here they were, on my doorstep, quiet but with everything spilling out in their faces. My brother started, voice low, almost careful. Hey, I don't normally do this, but we're kind of stuck. If you can help with anything, money, a place to crash for a bit, we'd really appreciate it. I just looked at them. Not with anger, not with sympathy either. Just disbelief. I counted the months since the last time they looked me in the eye without an ounce of shame. They'd always been the strong ones. The ones who brushed off everything like nothing hit them. And now, standing there, they were vulnerable in a way I never thought I'd see. My mind flicked back to all the times they called me weak for being alone, for choosing not to lean on anyone. Now, it was them asking, begging, and I want to be clear, I wasn't feeling joy or revenge. It was calm, almost like I was watching a scene that unfolded far too slowly. I stepped back and let them in. The kids stayed close, clutching little hands to the couch. My brother's wife sat down and took a breath, her voice cracking a little when she spoke. We honestly don't know how long this'll last. We've hit every door, every friend, every job lead. Nothing worked. I nodded. I'd known they were hurting, but hearing it from her, I could feel this quiet desperation in the room. Not loud, not dramatic, just heavy silence, like the weight of their failure was pressing all of us down. I waited, expecting one of them to look away, maybe cry, but they stayed. It was like they needed me to be the anchor, even though none of us wanted to admit that. We're not trying to take advantage, my brother said finally. We just don't want to make things worse. We thought maybe you could help. I clenched my fists inside my pockets. There was a part of me that wanted to say no, that still held on to all those old grudges and the way I'd been shut out. But that part didn't speak. Instead, I just told them to tell me what they needed, and we'd figure something out. No promises, no plans. Just a quiet agreement in the middle of the room. As I stood there, looking at them, I realized this was the turning point. The roles were flipped in a way none of us expected. The family who once had everything, now looking to me for some kind of lifeline. I wasn't excited or proud. I was calm. Too calm maybe, almost numb. But beneath that was this strange disbelief, like seeing something you never thought possible actually happen. Almost like this shift gave me a tiny spark of power, one I never asked for, but wasn't going to ignore either. They used to call me weak for being alone. Now, they were the ones begging at my door. And in that silence, the meaning of everything we'd been through roared louder than any words ever could. They came to the door just after dinner. I heard the knock, 3 solid raps that didn't quite sound like them, not with hesitation bleeding through. I opened a crack, enough to see their faces before the cold wind caught the edge of it and pushed it wider. Their eyes were a mix of disbelief and accusation, the way they always get when they think I'm still the person I used to be. But I wasn't. "What are you doing here?" I said, voice tighter than I wanted. "We want to help," my sister said. Her voice was soft, like she was trying not to wake up all the anger that was lurking somewhere beneath the surface. I could smell the fear on her. Fear that nothing was ever going to get better, not with me hanging on this stubborn edge of silence. I sighed, leaned back against the door slammed tight behind me. "That door's closed." Her brows furrowed, like maybe she didn't catch it the first time. "Please, we don't want to fight. Just let us in. Let us help." "No, not this time," I said, and it wasn't weakness or stubbornness, not really. It was something I'd taken months to understand, like an anchor I'd finally dropped and refused to pull back up. They looked at me, stunned, like the walls between us had just turned into something solid and real. My brother's jaw tightened, but he stayed quiet. Maybe he was the one holding the family's anger together right now, the one who didn't want to watch it all collapse over another meaningless argument. But I saw it anyway, how wide those lines between us had gotten, how badly we'd all torn at each other while pretending to care. "You don't owe us this," my sister whispered. Almost an apology, but everything she really meant was caught somewhere deeper. I glanced past them, at the evening spilling in around the streetlights and the low hum of the city pretending it was calm, and I felt this strange calm settle in me too. It wasn't hate that shut the door. It was finally loving myself enough to keep it closed. There it was. A truth I'd been too scared to say out loud until now. I wasn't shutting them out because I wanted to hurt them or because I'd given up on them. I was doing it for me. For the first time, it wasn't about punishing anyone or asking for something they never gave. It was about protecting the fragile part of myself I'd spent years trying to find. They didn't say anything after that, just looked at me with those hollow faces I'd memorized during every painful day that led here. The silence grew thick, almost unbearable, but I didn't move. I let the quiet stretch between us, letting them feel it, the barrier no apology or promise could break now. Finally, my brother stepped forward, voice low but sharp. "If you change your mind, you know where to find us." There was something brittle in the way he said it, like he was trying to hold back all the words they couldn't say. I know, I nodded. But I'm not looking for a way back. I'm done trying to patch something that's been shattered too many times. It wasn't regret. Not really. Just the kind of tired that settles deep, like a weight in your chest that won't let you breathe right. Then they turned and walked away. I closed the door slowly, the lock clicking into place like a heartbeat. I leaned my forehead against the wood for a moment. Not anger. Not relief, exactly. Just peace. The kind that's messy and imperfect, but real. Maybe this was how it had to be. Maybe some doors don't open again. And maybe, for once, that was okay. I'm sitting at the kitchen table again. Just me. The same old table, the same chipped edge I've accidentally scratched last year when my hands were shaky. The silence feels different this time. Not loud or empty, like it used to be. It's softer, like it's wrapped around me, not pushing me away. I'm chopping onions for dinner. The knife clicks against the cutting board in that familiar rhythm. Somehow it's calming. I used to rush through this part, chopping fast to get it over with, as if swallowing noise would make the quiet less unbearable. But tonight, I'm steady, slow, present. The light from the window is fading. The streetlights haven't flicked on yet. Outside, the world is moving. But here, in this small kitchen, everything feels still and right. I catch the faint smell of garlic starting to sizzle in the pan. I didn't expect to notice it, but I do. It feels like a small victory, being able to smell something without flinching or focusing on what's missing. I remember when I first started eating alone after everything happened. Meals felt like punishments, reminders that I was by myself, that the conversations and laughter were gone. This silence was a cage. But now, the same silence they mocked, the empty space they left behind, that silence is the one that saved me. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel loneliness sometimes, still do. But it's different. It's under my control, not a shadow that swallowed me whole. I'm not numb anymore. I can sit here, on my own, and not feel broken. I can breathe through the quiet and let it fill me instead of suffocating me. I plate the food, simple, just some pasta with sauce. No one to argue about the meal, no one to judge my choices or ask why I'm so quiet. It's just me, and I realize I'm grateful, not just for the food or the roof over my head, but for this moment. for the peace in the silence. A soft buzz from my phone pulls me out of the quiet. I stare at it a second, no messages. Just the screen lighting up the empty counter. I flick it off and set it down. I don't need noise right now. I don't want distractions. The chair creaks slightly when I sit down. I look at the empty seat opposite me. It used to be full of arguments, tears, apologies I never wanted to forgive, but did anyway. It was heavy when it was occupied, and it felt hollow when it wasn't. Now, empty, it just feels quiet. Whole. I put the fork to my lips, tasting the food. It's nothing fancy, but it's mine. I made it. I'm here. I'm still here. And that feels stronger than anything I thought I'd survive. There's a calm I didn't think I'd find again. I don't have to fill the silence or pretend I'm okay. I can just be. And maybe that's what makes this night different. The understanding that being alone isn't the same as being lonely. That peace is possible without noise, without company. Just this quiet, steady space that is mine. The plate is half empty, but I'm not rushed to finish it. I sit back and let the silence wash over me, the pause between each breath like a gentle reminder. I'm okay. Not because someone else made it so, but because I chose it. For the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid of this silence. I close my eyes for a second and take it all in. This moment, this stillness. And then, just as I'm about to reach for my glass of water, the phone buzzes again. This time, it's a message. I don't know who it's from, but I'm already sitting up, heart tight, and just a little bit ready.